You are listening to CMQ Investing. I'm your host, Chris Franco, and I'm going to read you one of the most interesting and useful pieces from Warren Buffett's 1996 letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders. It's about trying to identify companies that are inevitable. That is, their future dominance is practically, well, it's their destiny. It's written in stone. We can all find companies that are currently dominating their respective fields right now. The question is, how many of those dominant companies will continue to be dominant and perhaps even more dominant over the next 10 years? Those companies, Warren Buffett says, are called the inevitables. And this is something that he and Charlie Munger are always looking for but rarely find. And in this episode, you'll learn what they both are looking for in these companies. We'll get right to that, but before we do, just a friendly reminder to make sure you follow or subscribe to CMQ Investing on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's totally free. It takes about 2 seconds, and that way you will never miss out on any of the latest releases. You'll have them in your feed as soon as they drop, and I'm releasing new episodes every single week. So again, this is the best way to stay on top of that. Also, make sure you hit the notification option, and that way you'll know as soon as they are ready to roll. Okay, let's get to it. Companies such as Coca-Cola and Gillette might well be labeled the inevitables. Forecasters may differ a bit in their predictions of exactly how much soft drink or shaving equipment business these companies will be doing in 10 or 20 years. Nor is our talk of inevitability meant to play down the vital work that these companies must continue to carry out in such areas as manufacturing, distribution, packaging, and product innovation. In the end, however, no sensible observer, not even these companies' most vigorous competitors, assuming they are assessing the matter honestly, questions that Coke and Gillette will dominate their fields worldwide for an investment lifetime. Indeed, their dominance will probably strengthen. Both companies have significantly expanded their already huge shares of market during the past 10 years, and all signs point to their repeating that performance in the next decade. Obviously, many companies in high-tech businesses or embryonic industries will grow much faster in percentage terms than will the inevitables, but I would rather be certain of a good result than hopeful of a great one. Let me say that again. I would rather be certain of a good result than hopeful of a great one. Now, that was me, by the way, saying, let's say it again. Warren Buffett didn't say that in the letter, but that's such an important point to remember. It might not seem like it's that big of a deal, but you're looking for some sort of certainty, some sort of predictability, versus, having an overly optimistic view of the future. Warren Buffett continues, "Of course, Charlie and I can only identify a few inevitables, even after a lifetime of looking for them. Leadership alone provides no certainties. Witness the shocks some years back at General Motors, IBM, and Sears, all of which had enjoyed long periods of seeming invincibility. Though some industries or lines of business exhibit characteristics that endow leaders with virtually insurmountable advantages, and that tend to establish survival of the fattest as almost a natural law, most do not. Thus, for every inevitable, there are dozens of imposters, companies now riding high but vulnerable to competitive attacks. Considering what it takes to be an inevitable, Charlie and I recognize that we will never be able to come up with a nifty 50 or even a twinkling 20. To the inevitables in our portfolio, therefore, we add a few highly probables. You can, of course, pay too much for even the best of businesses. The overpayment risk periodically, and in our opinion, may now be quite high for the purchase of virtually all stocks, the inevitables included. Investors making purchases in an overheated market need to recognize that it may often take an extended period for the value of even an outstanding company to catch up with the price they paid. A far more serious problem occurs when the management of a great company gets sidetracked and neglects its wonderful base business while purchasing other businesses that are so-so or worse. When that happens, the suffering of investors is often prolonged. Unfortunately, that is precisely what transpired years ago at both Coke and Gillette. Loss of focus is what most worries Charlie and me when we contemplate investing in businesses that in general look outstanding. All too often, we've seen value stagnate in the presence of hubris or of boredom that cause the attention of managers to wander. That's not going to happen again at Coke and Gillette, however, not given their current and prospective managements. And again, that comes from the 1996 letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders. But the question to ask ourselves here is, what businesses are inevitables or would be considered to be the inevitables? I would say Apple. If you look at how Apple did the last decade, does it seem like they are going to not be able to repeat that in the next decade? To me, it seems very clear that Apple will be able to do that. Now, I could be totally wrong, and you shouldn't invest based on what I'm saying there, obviously. But I will definitely give this question some more thought because, while I don't expect to necessarily come up with the answer easily, it is an interesting sort of filter to ask yourself when you're looking at any kind of business, which is, does this have the inevitability element to it? Most will not, but then you could maybe say, well, is this a highly probable? So with that being said, for CMQ Investing, my name is Chris Franco. I hope you'll follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Please share it with a friend, let someone else know about it, and make sure you listen to some of the other episodes. There are over 100. I've put my heart and soul into them, and I hope you find them as useful as I have found them for me as an investor. So with that being said, once again, thank you for listening. We'll talk soon. Later.